In this video, we're going to explore the second dimension of chords known as voicing. This is the vertical component of building chords to give us the flexibility to make them sound more sparse or full, etc. Stay tuned. Let's go over a little bit of music terminology. For the chords that we've been using, each chord has 3 notes, and each note has a name. A 3-note chord is known as a triad. The lowest note of a triad, the note by which it's named, is called the root. We went over this before. The middle note is called the third, and the reason for that is that it's 3 letter names away from the root. In this example, C, D, E. That's a third. The highest note is called the fifth because it's 5 letter names away from the root. C, D, E, F, G in this example. If we look at all of our chords, we see that they are comprised of a root, a third, and a fifth. And all the notes are white keys on the piano, well, at least for now. So we're here to talk about voicing, and voicing refers to the vertical manner in which we arrange a chord. We can make the chord fit within 1 octave, which we would call a closed chord voicing, or we can make the chord bigger than an octave, which we would call an open chord voicing. They both have their advantages, so let's explore them. I just want to say that some of these voicings will break our voice leading rules that we learned about previously, and that's okay. We want to use a mixture of these voicing types to produce good music. Each of these voicings can be rated by how full or how sparse or thin they are. Let's start with the most thin and sparse voicing, thirds. And in this example, we have F major first. Its notes are F, A, and C. F to A is a third because it spans 3 letter names, F, G, and A. And you'll notice that A to C, so the third to the fifth, is also a third because it also spans 3 letter names, A, B, C. In each of the chords, we have 2 sets of thirds. For this technique, we can either remove the top note of the chord and leave the lower 2 notes, which form a third, or we can remove the bottom note and leave the top 2 notes, which also forms a third. Either way, we will only have 2 notes playing for each of the chords, and this makes for a very thin or low energy sound. So let's go chord by chord and let's remove some of the notes. So let's say I just want to remove all the top notes. And now this time I'll remove the bottom note. I'll remove the top note here and the top note here. So smooth voice leading is not quite possible with this technique because remember, smooth voice leading refers to us making the top note not jump around, and we can clearly see a couple jumps. So in order to perform this voicing technique, the top note will jump most of the time. Let's hear what this sounds like. So there is some smooth motion with some of the notes between the chords, but once again, we're not always going to get a nice smooth motion for the entire time. Now, something that you can also do with this technique is you can raise or lower the notes up an octave. So if I want this sound to sound really high, I might take all these notes, so that's an A, and I might bump it up an octave or 2. Right there. So experiment with what octaves you're putting them in. If you want it to sound even thinner, you put it higher. If you want it to sound a little bit more full, you put it lower. The second technique, tenths, is based on our thirds technique. So I'm going to keep the same pattern. I'm just going to lower it by an octave. So that's an A, bring it down to the lower A. And we'll still keep 2 notes for each chord, But what we're going to do is we're going to take that higher note and we're going to raise it up by an octave. And if you want to select all the higher notes in one shot, what you can do is you can hold the Shift key and then click on each note. So I know this is an A, I need to move it up to the higher A, and then every other note will be moved up by an octave as well. There we go. So if we were to count white keys or letter names, we'll notice that from this note to this note, we have a tenth, and the same thing for each of them. It's always a tenth apart. So F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. That is a tenth. Here's how it sounds. Okay, so it sounds great. This is slightly less thin than the thirds technique, and this technique also does not always use smooth voice leading. Our third technique is called rootless voicing. So right now we have our triads for every chord, and right now the root is the lowest note. So this is an F major chord, the lowest note is F. This is a C major chord, the lowest note is C. And so what we want to do is we want to use smooth voice leading, but we're not going to duplicate the root and put it down an octave. All we're going to do is we're just going to rearrange the chords so that the top note moves nice and smoothly. So let me do that quickly. So here's a C, I'll move it up an octave. So now we have C going to C. That's D, so that's pretty smooth already. That's E. I'm going to move this down an octave. And so we have this moving really smooth, C, C, D, C, C. This one needs to be moved up an octave, it's a C. So it stays on C. Then we have D, E. And once again, move that down an octave. Okay, so this is a really smooth voice line. And you'll notice that now our root is not on the bottom of the chord. So this chord right here is F major. It has the root on the bottom. This chord is C major. It has the third on the bottom. So the root's on top, the third, and the fifth. And so every chord will be in a slightly different orientation. And this is what we call rootless voicings. Here's what it sounds like. So if you listen carefully, you'll hear that melody line on top. That's the melody of this particular rootless voicing. Our fourth technique is called tenths, but with 3 notes this time. So we start with our simple closed voicing, and we take the middle note for each chord, and we're going to bump it up an octave. So we can do the same thing that we did before, which is just click on one of them first, then hold Shift, and click on the rest of the middle notes. So we're choosing the third for each chord. And then I know this one is an A, so I'll bump that up an octave, and the rest will follow. So now between the root and the third, we actually have the interval of a tenth, or the spacing would be what we call a tenth. So we have our root, then our fifth, then our third. So this is a more open voicing because it's bigger than an octave, and it's also a more full voicing. This technique also doesn't use smooth voice leading, which is fine. Here's how it sounds. Our fifth and final technique is full voicing with voice leading this time. So this is what we learned in our last voice leading tutorial. And we make a copy of the root for each of the chords. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to select all of them. So I'll select the root. And I will simply copy them right here. My first root is an F, so now I have all the roots. And this made my region a little bit bigger, so I'll shorten that. So now we've copied the roots, and then we have to do smooth voice leading with the top 3 notes. Now with this technique, if we wanted to make it even more full, what we could do is simply copy the root again. And I'll drag it down an octave. So now it's spaced out even more, and this makes it even more powerful. Let's take care of the top 3 notes to make them voice lead nicely. Okay, and I'm gonna let this one go up. So I just want you to hear this by itself. I'll solo this and I'll turn the cycle region on. So here's what it sounds like with full voicing. Those double octaves really add a lot of power. If you want it to be less powerful, get rid of the extra octave. So each of these techniques is like a color that a painter would use. So when creating music, we want to use a mixture of these techniques in different tracks to paint our picture properly. Try them out on your own project and see which ones you like. Stay tuned for more.